It's time for the No Nonsense Roundtable. Insights to capture your imagination from people you know and people you'd like to know about. Each week, a different guest from a different walk of life. Now, here is the host of the No Nonsense Roundtable, Dom Genova.
Well, good morning, everybody. You're listening to another edition of the No Nonsense Roundtable. I'm your host, Dom Genova, as always, every Saturday, 10 to 11 on News Radio Wham 1180. I'm here with a fellow who's become a very good friend of mine since his first appearance on the show back in April, and his name is Karl LaPorta. Hey, Karl, how you doing?
Doing great, Dom, and thank you so much for having me back.
Well, it's been delightful knowing you all this time. Now, Karl's claim to fame is he's a musician. He was a piano tuner at one time, had a very great upbringing in his home with music. And I think a thing that people don't know about Karl is one of the accomplishments he had, and that was he was the fellow who actually established the Rochester Music Hall of Fame. It's a great story. We're going to get into that in a second. But we're going to talk today about his band, the tribute they're doing on 9/11. And also I have with him a good friend and associate of his, John Dretto. Hi, John. How you doing?
Hey, Dom. How are you?
So, it kind of works this way. You can be a performer and you can have this wonderful talent, but you also need people behind the scenes that are doing the production, the marketing, and all the other good things that make the band known and popular and successful. And I guess to explain things, that's sort of how it is. We have the fella with the musical talent who's going to be playing on stage. We have the guy behind the scenes who's going to be making sure as many people as possible learn about the band and make it successful. I think that's the way to word this thing. Don't you think, guys?
Yes.
I agree.
Yep, right on the money.
So let's start going a little bit about a review of what we did the last show with you, Karl. You grew up in a musical background, was a piano tuner for a while, which is quite a talent in and of itself. And how you got interested in music and sort of like a little bit about your path.
Okay, well, I started taking piano lessons from my dad when I was about 6 years old, and I took for at least 10 years. I think it was a minimum of 10 years. And during that time, you know, you start becoming a teenager, you start listening to rock and roll. And, you know, because of the experience of playing the piano, I was able to pick up a lot of that music and I enjoyed it very much. And by the time I was 15 and 16 years old, we started getting together with some friends and put together a rock and roll band called The Last Rites. Mm-hmm. And within 6-7 months, we were out there playing. And at that time, there were so many places you could play. There were churches, high schools, teen clubs, parties, you name it. And there was also a band on every corner at that time. So at any rate, that got me going with this. And I took a little bit of a break when I married my lovely wife, Donna, and took a break and then got back into it.
You were very young.
Yes, I was. I was 15 years old. And along with the rest of the guys, we could never play in a bar because we were too young to drink.
Well, and the drinking age back then was 18.
It was 18. We were still too young. Although there were times when we played the frat parties at the U of R where a couple of the guys would want to sneak down into the basement where the kegs were and grab a beer or two. But our management, which was my father and my uncle, frowned on that. So, but I'll never forget those years. It was the time of my life. We had a great time with it. And, you know, not a care in the world at that time. You're still in high school and, you know, you're playing music, you love it, and it was a great time growing up.
So your band now is called what?
It's called Music of the Stars, and it was a concept put together by our lead singer, Frank Shrout. Mm-hmm. Frank is a veteran who's been in the music business probably as long as I have, and Frank has traveled all over the world. You name it, Frank's played there. Europe, Asia, cruise ships, and you know, after an amount of time of you know, maybe playing maybe 30 weeks out of the year on the road, he decided to come back home and put something together that wasn't quite as intense. Mm-hmm. Maybe playing, you know, different casinos and theaters and special events around the country, but maybe just on weekends. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean we wouldn't travel overseas. And there's been some talk of that. But this was his concept of putting a band together of performing the music of some of the greatest stars of our era. I'm talking about 60s, 70s, and 80s. So we're talking about Elvis, the Beatles, the Bee Gees, Elton John, Neil Diamond, the Four Seasons, and others. And along the way, we added another veteran singer, although by looking at her, you'd never think she's a veteran, Rhonda Federation, who actually traveled with Frank, back in the day. And, so that gave us other options where, she added Whitney Houston, Celine Dion, Tina Turner, Etta James, the Supremes. We do music by that. So that kind of rounded the band off. And to touch on the rest of the musicians in the band, it took a while to find the right combination. But I think we finally have. We all get together great. They're all great musicians. And I'm going to start with Jonathan Dretto, who is the son of our producer, Mr. John Dretto, who's here today. And John is a fantastic guitar player. He's 22 years old. And I think he's 30 years younger than the youngest guy in the band.
Young enough to be a grandson.
He's a great musician, but he is mature beyond his years. For him to put up with a bunch of old guys who talk about their medical problems and everything else like that is fantastic, But he fits like a glove in our band, and he adds quite a show also to us. And, we'll touch on him maybe more later.
Well, one of the things that we were talking about before we started the show is that you play bigger venues, which is really impressive. This isn't that you take weddings and stuff. I mean, this is big time.
Yeah. Well, the goal of the band was always to play the bigger venues. Most of us had toiled in the bars over the years, getting home at 2 a.m, smelling like cigarettes, smoking beer, and, having to grab our gear. I remember the days of driving back from Buffalo and I could see the sun coming up. Those days were long over for me. But to get back to the rest of the musicians in the band, we have our drummer, Fabian Provenza, another veteran, has traveled and everything, and he also does a lot of the booking for the band. We also have Mr. Pete Riccardi, who's our other keyboard player. Well, I spoke about Rhonda, our singer. We have Willie Lopez, who is our terrific bass player. So I think we've covered everybody in the band here, and we could touch on that a little bit more.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're about ready to head into a break, and we're going to talk about, that and maybe give a little indication of what it's like to attend one of your shows, because it's got to be awfully interesting, the crowd that you attract. Well, I'm Dom Genova, your host, and today I have, for the second time, I have Karl LaPorta, a good friend of mine, a musician and a performer. And with him, we have John Dretto, who is, I guess the guy behind the scenes that makes the band as successful as it is. And we were talking about the different artists that you tribute in your band. But let's talk about some of the songs. It sounds like a real great collection of music. And if somebody's going to find something they like in what you're playing.
Great. Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the keys to our music is our singers are gifted where they can sound close to the artist. For instance, Frank does Elvis very well. He also does Frankie Valli. Not too many people can sing the Four Seasons. And it's the same with the Bee Gees, singing up that high. And he does that very well. And Roy Orbison, he can sound like Roy Orbison. He does the Beatles very well. And the same goes for Rhonda. I mean, she sings Etta James. I mean, it's
really?
Yeah, people are sitting there and looking at her and go, wow. And the same with Whitney Houston. And we don't just pick the simple songs that they do. When we do Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons, we do a medley. We go from one song right to the other. And one of the things that I failed to mention was that whatever artist we do, we have a big screen behind us. And it's like if we're doing Neil Diamond, you'll be watching Neil Diamond in the background.
Oh, that's cool.
And we do that for every artist, and it just enhances the show. And during certain segments, you'll find our singers out in the audience. You'll definitely find Jonathan, our guitar player, out in the audience. It's a show. Yeah. It's not only a band that you're just going to sit there and watch. It's a show. Yeah. And, that's what sells the band, I believe.
Yeah, it's entertainment.
Correct.
So who's having more fun, you guys in the band or the audience?
Boy, it's pretty close. I'll tell you what. To us, if the audience is having fun, we've done our job, and we feel really good about it. It's a successful night. The musicians will know, we all make mistakes when we're up there. And most of the time, the audience doesn't know it. But overall, if we make the audience happy, then we feel like we've done a great show and we're happy. And I got to also say that a lot of this falls on our sound and light crew, too. A sound man can make or break a band. He really can. And, we've searched high and low for different ones, and we only use certain people to do our events.
Well, I love it when a guest makes my segues easy, because you said the sound and light guy, and also the guy behind the scenes promoting the band.
Exactly.
And we happen to have him right here. So why don't you give me some insight from your side of the business, John?
Well, I kind of slid into working behind the scenes. My identity is the guitar player's father, and after attending a number of rehearsals early on before they played their first show with the current lineup, I really became quite interested and quite invested in the band myself. And so, again, once the band started to perform, I thought, I might have 2 cents that might be of some help. Considering my background, I was a small business owner and I wore all the hats, and I was responsible for promoting my own business. I produced a number of events over the years with my business, and also had some experience with not-for-profits that I've been involved with for quite some time. So little by little, my 2 cents kind of grew into 3 cents and 4 cents, and really has culminated with our show on September 11th.
Yeah, let's mention the show on September 11th, because you're doing a show, obviously, on a very important day to people. And tell me more about it.
Yeah, it's of course it's the 20th anniversary of the attacks in New York City. And the show came about kind of accidentally. The Italian American Community Center in Gates had an open date on September 11th. And so the band booked the date. And I thought about the significance of the day itself, and thought, maybe something could be done to acknowledge the event. And of course, there's a lot of things going on all over the country to commemorate 9/11. But as I started to think about it, it occurred to me that Rochester, because of the proximity to New York City, had an awful lot of people, possibly hundreds, and I don't really know the number, but possibly hundreds who went to Ground Zero in the aftermath. Some spent days, some spent weeks, and there were those that spent months in the aftermath, contributing to not only rescue efforts early on, but all the other things that went on at Ground Zero. And so I brought it to the band at rehearsal one night, and I go to a lot of the rehearsals. They're fun, and we talk, and I brought it to the band. I kind of penciled out an idea how it might go, and everybody said, wow, that's a good idea. Once in a while I get one, right? I said, that's my good idea for the decade. But I said, all right, let me work on this and see what I can do. And it kind of grew from there. And so we're really... the show was going to revolve around honoring, at this point, 7 people from Rochester, and I'll briefly tell you about each of them, who were at Ground Zero and made significant contributions, and some in detriment to their own health and welfare. Very briefly, Jody Stromfeld, who was the widow of Andy Stromfeld, he was NYPD. and eventually became Fisher's fire chief. Unfortunately, Andy passed from cancer complications from exposure. Ahmed Mustafa is a volunteer firefighter, paramedic who was on the pile. Pete Rizzo, retired Rochester Fire Department Rescue Company captain, was there immediately. Marjorie Beldu, a social worker who was there for weeks, helping victims' families and volunteers. 2 New York State troopers, Gary Nessel and Craig Bianchi, who were there for months. And Mr. James Love, who's executive director of the American Red Cross Greater Rochester chapter. And although Jim wasn't there, the Red Cross sent dozens of people. So he is also going to be an honoree at the event.
And everyone needs to remember the event's presenting sponsors are Howard Hanna Real Estate and Salvador's Pizza. It sounds like a really great event, and it's a great thing that you guys are doing, just all told. You're listening to No Nonsense Roundtable. I'm Dom Genova, your host, as always, every Saturday, 10 to 11 on News Radio WHAM 1180. I am here with Karl LaPorta, a good friend of mine, a musician, and, just all-around good friend. And John Dretto, who is, the guy who does a lot of the production and behind-the-scenes stuff for the band that Karl is in. And the bottom of the hour, I give a shout-out to the Bob Johnson Auto Group, who sponsors the show, who happens this year to be sponsoring the First Responders Appreciation Day at the Red Wings Stadium of Frontier Field on August 22nd. So anybody who is a first responder, fire, EMS, and police, your departments have all been asked to give us a number of tickets that they would request. We have 2,000 tickets to hand out for you and your families to come to a game. Now, we're not asking you to take a test drive or fill out a form or whatever. It's just the Bob Johnson Auto Group way of saying thank you for what you do, which is right in the wheelhouse of what you fellows are doing with this tribute that you're doing at 9/11.
That's correct. It's an extension of what you're doing, and just after. We are honoring first responders from various service areas who, in the aftermath of 9/11, served in various capacities from days to weeks and some even months.
Well, it's important that we remember too. I mean, we keep on saying we'll never forget, but we have to do something proactively to remember.
If we don't, it will be lost. And one of my concerns in proposing this concept to Music of the Stars was that while there'll be possibly hundreds of events during the day talking about the attacks themselves, I wanted to be sure that the people who responded in the aftermath were not forgotten.
Well, before we get too farther along, let's tell people how they can get tickets for the event.
Sure. The event is, again, Saturday, September 11th at the Italian-American Community Center. Tickets are available on Eventbrite, and there's a number of ways you can access the ticket link, either through the Italian-American Community Center website. You can go to Music of the Stars Facebook page. There's a link there with the event. Or you can go to Music of the Stars website, the events page, and there's a ticket link there. Just click on Buy Tickets.
So this isn't going to be just songs that are patriotic songs. I mean, this is a regular show that you're doing too.
This is a show. As a matter of fact, just to map out the night, this is a dinner show. The doors open at 5:30. Dinner at 6:30. Buffet dinner, and they do a great job. And then the show at 8 o'clock. And the show itself will have a patriotic theme. We're going to open with the national anthem. The first song will be a song that really pays tribute not only to these people but to our country. Then there'll be a set of music. And at the end of the set of music, our host for the evening, Maureen McGuire, who is just a wonderful lady and does an awful lot for this community. Maureen will take over the duties and introduce each of our honorees who served. There'll be a brief break, and then there'll be another set of music from Music of the Stars.
So you're having a buffet, which is sort of like the music they You play a buffet of music, you would say, Karl, wouldn't you?
I would agree 100%.
So tell us specifically some of the songs that are your favorite to play in the band. What riles up the crowd in the most positive way of the songs? Which ones do they stomp their feet for the most?
Well, I think for this particular show, we have learned a song by Neil Diamond, which is related to immigrants that came over to our country. And it's called America. And, throughout the whole song, they're saying, and they're coming to America, they're coming to America. So this is all about our country and what makes it so great. So after the national anthem, we're going to open with that song. But during the course of the night, of course they're going to get up when we do the disco Bee Gees.
Oh, yeah.
They get up in the aisles. It doesn't matter whether we're doing a theater or we're doing the Italian American Community Center. They're up there and dancing. But they also, they'll clap their hands and, for other, like Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons, the Beatles, a lot of people like Elvis.
Well, what you were saying before, somebody does the good falsetto.
Oh, Frank, our lead singer. There's not many people that can hit anything the Gibbs brothers do in the Bee Gees or Frankie Valli, but Frank has that gift. Even at his tender age of 65, he has not lost a thing. And then when we're talking about belting out Whitney Houston or Celine Dion or Tina Turner or anything, Rhonda does it phenomenally. Our two singers are just fantastic, and they get the crowd really going. And then, you get Jonathan, our guitar player. He gets out there, and he goes out to the tables, and he's playing in front of the people, and they absolutely love it. Yeah. And sometimes I've seen him run up to the second floor, and he's up there.
You're talking about Jonathan, your son, right?
Correct. Yeah, he's got a wireless rig, so he can be anywhere.
Well, tell the crowd listening how to find him on YouTube or something. He's an extraordinary talent.
Well, thank you. Well, you know what? He's a good kid, and he works very, very hard at his craft. He was blessed by the good Lord with some raw talent, but I can't overstate how many thousands of hours he's put in to get to the level that he's at.
Well, let's spend just 30 seconds giving him a little bit of a promotion, because I saw a YouTube of him, and he's got it. He is really an extraordinary talent. Now, why don't you spell your last name so people can Google your son there?
Right. And my son, of course, is Jonathan, but he goes by John, Jon, and the last name is Dretto, Dretto. And he can be found on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and in addition, a number of his songs are on the standard music platforms.
Yeah, I had to get that in there because somebody sent me a link to one of his videos, and if you haven't seen him, he is amazing, absolutely amazing. I am here with the great Karl LaPorta, musician and founder of the Rochester Music Hall of Fame. Very, very interesting story. And John Dretto, who does a lot of I would say the behind the scenes things that need to be done to get a band successful and listened to. And the band is Music of the Stars. But we were talking at the break about the Rochester Music Hall of Fame. It's a very, very interesting story, and I'll tell it in short. Is that the way it got started is that Karl wrote a letter to the newspaper and said we should have a Rochester Music Hall of Fame, and basically they said, "Okay, pal, go ahead and do it." Right?
Basically, that's exactly what happened. In fact,
yeah, and it's a big deal. The people that you've honored. Well, you mentioned a few of them.
Well, it is a big deal. We've honored people like Steve Gadd, Chuck Mangione, Gap Mangione, Gene Cornish from the Young Rascals, Gary Lewis from Gary Lewis and the Playboys. And we've honored many from different genres of music.
Ferdinand J.
One
of my favorites.
Yeah. He was honored, I think it was 3 years ago now. Because of the pandemic, we haven't done anything the last...
Well, let's talk about that. What do you have coming up?
Well, This year, we didn't have it because of the pandemic, of course, but we're looking forward to 2022 on April 24th. We plan on holding an induction ceremony at the Eastman Theater's Kodak Hall. So we can't announce the inductees yet. We do that in a press conference. But one of the things is behind the scene, we're still involved in the community. And actually on Friday, August 13th, there's going to be a little show performance by John Dady, who is one of the great musicians from our area and an inductee into the Rochester Music Hall of Fame. And he's going to be performing from 7 to 9 at the Rochester Music Hall of Fame venue, which is on the corner of East Avenue and Gibbs Street. So if you'd like tickets to go to see that and support the Hall of Fame, all you have to do is go to the RochesterMusicHallOfFame.org.
And I love stories. During the break, we were talking about a Paul Simon story because, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Well, when we inducted Steve Gadd.
Yeah, and explain to people who Steve Gadd is.
Okay, Steve Gadd is probably the premier drummer, studio drummer in the world.
Okay.
And he's also been the drummer for James Taylor and Paul Simon and Eric Clapton, to say the least.
There you go.
So in this case, we were hoping that he would bring in somebody, and we thought it might be either Paul Simon or James Taylor. Well, as it turned out, at the last minute, he ended up getting Paul Simon, but nobody in the audience knew that was going to happen. So Paul Simon showed up, and when Steve introduced them, it just brought the house down. They went crazy, and they're clapping for 5 minutes or so, and Paul's just standing there with his hands on his guitar, straight poker face, and finally they stop, and he's speechless. All of a sudden he says, "Requests?" And they start going wild again, and they start naming all these different songs that they want to hear and everything, and he's sitting there with a poker face and everything. So the clapping stops again in another 5 minutes, and so he's very quiet, and all of a sudden he gives this little sneer, and he goes, "I don't do requests." And everybody started, at first they didn't know what to expect, but then there's a smile on his face, and everybody started cracking up. And he went on to put on quite a performance with Steve Gadd.
Yeah, another, like I like to say, another regular guy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, good. Let's talk a little bit more about the show coming up on September 11th. And again, it's not only a bunch of fellas and gals singing. It's a entertaining venue, a meal along with it, and let's talk about that, John.
Yeah, it's an event, and we think it's going to be a memorable event, and not just because of the people that we're honoring, but because it's going to be a great night of music, a great meal. They've got a brand new bar. They've spent an awful lot of money, done a beautiful job. And again, this is at the Italian American Community Center on Frank Domino Way. So just to recap, the show again is Saturday evening, September 11th. Doors open at 5:30, dinner at 6:30, show at 8, and the show will probably be about 2 hours or so. Maureen McGuire is our host for the evening. She'll open things up. We'll have the national anthem, followed by a very patriotic song, "America" by Neil Diamond. At the end of the first set, we'll be honoring the people from the greater Rochester area who served in the aftermath. There'll be a break where you can go get a drink and shake hands and kiss babies, and then there'll be a second set of music from Music of the Stars. If you would like to get tickets, there are several ways you can do it. You can go to the Italian American Center Community Center website and click on events. There's a link. You can go to Music of the Stars Facebook page. There's a ticket link, or you can go to Music of the Stars webpage on events, and there's a button there, buy tickets.
And you'll find Karl LaPorta there playing with the group, and you'll find Karl LaPorta at any time in the morning at the Tim Hortons.
Oh, yeah.
Well, hold on a second, because I had to memorize this from our last show. There's Lenny, Dusty, Charlie, Tony, and let's not forget Dave.
Absolutely. We have a new one now.
Do you?
Yeah. Johnny.
Johnny, I'll have to remember that for the next show.
Yeah,
so
we call him Little Johnny.
How little is Little Johnny? Is this a sarcastic thing like he's 7'3" or something like that? Or is he actually little?
He's probably a shade under me.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Well, I get that. So thank you for coming in, guys. It's been a delightful hour, and I'd like to remind everybody that you can find our podcasts on nononsenseroundtable.com, and you can also suggest a guest. Go there, and there's a way of contacting me and be able to tell me about either yourself or somebody who might be a good guest. It's people you know, you want to know more about, and people that you don't know that you should know. And, well, you can tell I'm having a lot of fun. And thank you for listening, and thank you guys for coming in. It's been a delightful show, and we've got to do this again. And I will certainly be at the show on September 11th. It sounds like a really great deal.
Thanks for having us. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Tom.